right. So today we're going to be doing a quick engine wash video. I know some of you guys have been wondering how I wash my engine bay. Is it safe to blast the engine bay with water and soap? And I'm going to answer all your questions today. So I got all my goods right here lined up. Starting right here, this is my Honeydew foam wash. All right, you put this inside the foam sprayer, which is right here. This is the new big mouth foam sprayer from Chemical Guys. And right here is my favorite, Simple Green. All right, I love Simple Green because it's easy to use, it's non-corrosive, it won't leave marks if it dries up, and it's very friendly to the environment. All right, especially if you're blasting your engine bay, it's full of oil and stuff like that, it goes down the drain. So this is pretty, pretty friendly. It's biodegradable. This is my Zep bottle with a little bit of Simple Green and Purple Power. So Purple Power right here, it's pretty strong. I typically don't like to use this 100% because if it dries up on like bare aluminum, it will corrode it and it'll leave marks. It's a pain in the butt to remove. So I typically like to dilute this. Now, if you have a really dirty engine bay, you can use this at 100%. Just make sure it doesn't dry on the bare aluminum, and then blast it real quick with your pressure washer. So over here, this is my Honda pressure washer made by Craftsman. It's got a Honda 190cc engine on there. It's gas powered. I like the gas powered stuff better because it's just more reliable, I feel like. I've had the electrical ones before and they've always failed. So I just, shelled out. I forgot how much these things were. I think there's like a 500 bucks at Lowe's. So I bought one at Lowe's. I've had it for over 1.5 years, never had an issue with it. And over here is my Husky 30-gallon air compressor from Home Depot Motorsports. And yeah, it's good. It's your typical air compressor. I got a little filter on there. And I like using air compressor versus using a leaf blower because you can pinpoint the pressure, all right? So you can clean up the harnesses, wiring looms, battery, like crevices that you can't hit with a leaf blower. A leaf blower is kind of better for like the outside of the car when you wash the car, and that's good. So I'm going to show you how we're going to prep the car real quick, and then we're going to blast it with a pressure washer. All right, so depending on the car that you're working on, it's typically a 10mm wrench that you need or a socket. We're going to disconnect the negative battery cable, all right, right here, this guy, because you want to make sure you secure yourself. So just move this out of the way, make sure it's disconnected. At least you know that the battery is not connected. If something happens, you're safe. I've never actually opened this yet, so we'll see how it looks together. This thing was about 80 bucks, I think, if I remember correctly. And I do have their older version, and it's all right. It broke on me a few times, their canister, not the thing itself, but look at this. This boy, huge. Whoa, look at that. Dude, this is actually quite nice. Oh, okay. So this comes with a little hose right here. We're gonna put it inside like so. This is not an unboxing of this product, so I bought this at full price. I didn't get this for free, just FYI. Okay, now some people will say you only need X amount of soap, but I'm just gonna put, I don't know, enough. There you go. Good enough. Then we're gonna fill it up with water. This is my wand, by the way, so if you have the same pressure washer that I do, it comes with a big wand. I bought this on Amazon. Just gonna fill it up with water here. All right. Good enough. Just made a mess on my table. Then I'm gonna put this guy here. Dude, if you guys have never used a foam cannon before, it's quite a treat the first time you do it. And it never gets old, to be honest. Like every time I wash the car, I'm just like, oh my God, look at the foam. And I probably put too much solution, but it's okay. We have to wash the other cars anyways. So hopefully this fits my input. Ah, there you go, cool. But before we do that, I like to get my, what is this, 40 degree, and I like to rinse the engine bay first. So we're gonna do that and then we'll blast it. A lot of people will say, oh, you need to cover your distributor, or you need to cover your this or your fuse box or stuff like that. But most of these components are actually sealed, like the B series distributor right here. If you look at this, it's actually got an O-ring in there, so it's quite sealed. I've never had issues blasting this car the past few years that I've owned it. The fuse box, sealed, it's got an O-ring on it too. So unless you have an exposed air filter like I do in the MIATA, you know, the green HKS foam filter, I'd put a bag over that. But other than that, everything's pretty much safe, so game on. One thing I want to say though is you don't want to blast anything this close. All right, you never want to blast anything this close because you could blast water into the O-rings. So typically I'm about 1.5 feet away at most, unless, you know, it's just like solid metal. I'm just like, okay, I can't blast that. So we're gonna turn this guy on. Right, next, I'm gonna get my spray bottle here with some of my Simple Green, and I'm just gonna douse it. All right, I'm gonna douse it for about, I don't know, 10 minutes or so. All right, let the chemical work. And if you have a really dirty engine bay, you might want to get like a microfiber and then exfoliate a little bit. We'll do that, just so I could show you. So spray, spray, spray. Now, like I said, this is mainly Simple Green and a little bit of that purple powder. Not too much. So, spray this down. Mind you, my engine's cold. I didn't drive this car today, so totally fine. If you did drive your car, wait a few hours before you do this because all the chemicals that you're spraying on there, it's probably just gonna dry on to the hot surfaces. Okay. Next, get your microfiber, start exfoliating the surface here. Talking about doing your face or something. All right. I like using a new microfiber rag because it's not as thick and fat as a normal, what do you call it, wash mitt, and you can get it around corners. All right. Now, depending on when you're washing, it could be midday, it could be sunset. Just be mindful of the sun because it will dry out the mixture here. So just get in there. Now, my car's not that dirty, like I said, so I'm just gonna go through this really quickly. But if you have a really dirty car, you're gonna spend most of your time doing all this. You might need a brush too, but luckily I don't have that issue, so microfiber towel is good enough. Okay. And I don't like to use the terry cloths, what do I call those? Cotton cloths, because they're a little rough. So I just use this. Okay. Hit all the corners. And the reason why I rinse it is because I don't want to drag any of the pebbles on the paint when I'm doing this. So we sprayed this thing down, sat for about 5 minutes, and now we're ready to freaking blast this thing with water. As you can see, I'm not afraid to blast anything. Everything's pretty much sealed. The fuse box is fine. you know, we're gonna blast this with air after, but if you're worried about your fuse box or your distributor, you might wanna cover it depending on what car you're using or you're driving. Like I said, the filter, you might wanna cover that if you have an exposed filter. The fuse box, if you're scared, cover your fuse box, or anything that's kind of sketchy on your setup that you're not very positive that it's gonna be sealed, cover it up. Some people will be like, hey, shouldn't you cover the alternator because it might get wet? Well, think of it this way. If you live in an environment where it's like super, you know, wet all the time, like in the South where they have floods and stuff, you go over water puddles or big water like crossings, your alternator gets wet. It's actually conformal coated. All the windings are conformal coated, so it's totally fine to get it wet. I've never covered mine in the, I don't know, 20 years that we've owned this car. We've always cleaned the engine bay and no issues. So don't worry about it. But if you are, you know, very particular about stuff like that, put a bag over the alternator. Here's a relay box. We're gonna open this up, show you what's under. See? Completely dry. Nothing wet. I spent about an hour cleaning up this whole area right here, blowing out the crevices and all the wiring. As you can see, it's nice and dry and clean. Everything's nice and good. I've already connected the negative battery cable because everything's dry, so nothing's gonna happen there. And then we're just gonna grab this boy right here. This is Motool Shine and Go. I use this on everything, especially on like the motorcycles and a bunch of other like plastic fairings, paint. This works real good, but the surface needs to be clean. So I'm gonna shake this up, and then we're just gonna spray it. Now this stuff you can get at motorcycle parts stores or online, but beware, it's very expensive. But it works really, really good. And it smells like lime, lemon. I don't know, it smells almost like Pledge. But don't be afraid, this is not gonna kill your rubber or anything like that. I know some people have been like, hey, isn't that bad for your rubber? I've been using this for over 10 years with no ill effects, all right, other than amazing results. So I typically like to spray a good amount. All right, gets in the crevices. The OGs used to use wheel shine, the foam stuff, and they used to just douse it on. A lot of dealerships actually do that. That's a trick to make the engines look really nice and clean. You could do that too, but I find it a little bit more messy. So I use the Shine and Go, and it turns out really nice. Now, I try not to hit the belts too much because they do slip if you kind of douse it, but it should be okay if you hit it just a little bit. Okay, this is especially good for plastic trim. All right, you can also use Stoner Trim Restorer, stuff like that, Back to Black, the spray-on version. That works too if you can't find this stuff or if this stuff's too expensive, but I prefer this stuff and it always looks amazing. So just gonna spray a little bit more here, and then I'm gonna wipe it. All right, we're not just gonna leave it like this. We're gonna wipe it after, and then I'll show you the final product. And we're just gonna start wiping this off, and you'll see it looks really nice. Okay, you don't wanna leave this on, all right, because it's just gonna collect dust if it's just saturated with this stuff. So spray it on, wipe it off. And some corners you won't be able to reach, but that's okay. Just make sure you get most of it off, all right? Off your hoses, especially the belts, the pulley. after about 2 hours of work, this is what we've got. Simple and clean. Look at that. This thing actually shines now. And if you use the Motool Shine and Go, it would be the easiest way to get this type of shine. If not, you can use the Sonar Trim Shine from AutoZone or Pep Boys. And like I said, use Simple Green, those guys right there, and a little bit of the Purple Power. Not too much, because like I said, if you have raw aluminum like my valve cover here, my block right here, it's gonna etch it or it's gonna leave marks, and it's a total pain in the butt to remove. So about 2 hours, it's all you need. If it's really dirty, you know, really bad, just use a brush, a mitt, more microfiber towels, and maybe a little bit more chemical. And that's pretty much it. We're gonna turn it on right now to make sure everything's good. I've already connected the negative battery cable. No issues. Starts right up, nice and smooth. Add a little gas here. Nope, nothing. Now it sounds funny because that's an LS engine. This is a non-VTEC, and it just sounds like that. Hydraulic lifters, I think. Yeah, it just sounds kind of clunky, but that's how it sounds. Everything's nice and clean right here. Like I said, don't be afraid to wash your engine bay. Use a pressure washer. If you don't have a pressure washer, go to the coin wash and use theirs. And yeah, just make sure you completely dry it. Now, if you have questionable wiring, say your wiring right here is all frayed and it looks questionable, and you know, all these guys right here, or your injector wirings or your plugs, you know, I would blast it one day, you know, clean it real good, wipe it down. If you don't have a pressure washer or if you don't have an air compressor, just let it dry overnight, wipe it down real good, and then start it the next day. Make sure it's nice and dry. So that's pretty much it for today. Simple and easy way to wash your engine bay. Don't be afraid to wet your engine. They are made to be water resistant. They're not waterproof by any means. You can't submerge it in water and expect it to work. I mean, some of those like Range Rovers and stuff, you can, but I don't trust this. So as long as you spray it down real nice and then you blast it with air after, check all the connectors, like I said, all the vertical connectors like this guy and all these guys right here. Make sure that they're, you know, free of water. The cam angle sensor in the MIATA is notorious for getting water in there. So if you have an issue starting your MIATA after you washed it, pop the connector on the cam angle sensor, blast it with air, and you should be okay, because that happened to me before. I couldn't start my car because the cam angle sensor had water in it. Other than that, use Motool Shine and Go. It makes the engine bay just bling, and you know, it looks really shiny, and when you feel it, it's not oily at all, all right? But you gotta make sure that you actually wipe it off. You can't just leave it on there. If you can't find Motool Shine and Go at your local, you know, motorcycle shop, you can buy it online. You can buy it from Amazon, because I usually buy it from Amazon. And that's pretty much it. Don't be afraid to wet the alternator, your fuse box, your distributor, if you have an Integra like mine, because it's not a problem. Like I said, I popped those covers earlier. They were completely bone dry, and I have a, what, 3,200 PSI pressure washer. Again, like I said, you want to be about a foot and a half away from your target. All right, you don't want to be in there. And if you are in there, make sure you're only hitting metal, and hopefully it's not painted, because sometimes if it's too strong and you have bad paint, it will blast your paint off.